Silent Hill is an iconic horror game franchise, but because it has largely stayed on consoles, the only thing I got to experience from it was the 2006 movie adaptation, which was passable. However, it seems to be returning after an over decade of absence with the remake of Silent Hill 2 and a brand new game, Silent Hill 4. And yes, I did look up how that weird F with the hook is supposed to be pronounced. So I thought this could be a good opportunity to fix the hole in my general education and look at what came before, with the only two games that are available for computer players. Well, but all the PC ports of Silent Hill 2 and 3 so far haven't been released on digital stores, and I don't have that time nor resources to look at them. So let's then get to the nightmarish world of Silent Hill 4, The Room.
As the creative lead seems to be the game's director and writer Suguru Murakoshi, who had previously done drama directing for Silent Hill 2, whatever that means, and has later done game designing for The Evil Within 2 and leading it for Ghostwire Tokyo. The fact that every review of this game is obligated to mention, along with it being originally planned as a spin-off, is its divisive reception among the fandom. Equal amounts of calling it the last good one and the first bad one. I have no context of what Silent Hill game experience is supposed to be like, so perhaps that helps this game. Suddenly The Room! Yeah, once you start the game it goes directly to the events, no transition or proper setup. You are now a photographer Henry Townsend, played by Eric Bosick, living in the city of Ashfield, who is a prisoner in his own apartment where nightmares manifest. It's an effective beginning in its rawness, and never before has a game made me feel this viscerally uncomfortable.
I guess what makes this effective is that if you take away all the supernatural stuff, it has many relatable mundane elements adding to the horror. Henry spends most of his time inside, doesn't have much social context, his career may or may not be in limbo, and windows and that hole he can spy his neighbor from are his only contacts with the outside world. Am I Henry Townsend? Well, no, I don't do that spying on your neighbors thing. I mean, this is Finland. No one cares what their neighbors are doing.
Soon Henry finds a hole in his bathroom and upon entering it finds himself in the title or Silent Hill. Or at least some of the locations in this nightmare world are based on it. There he meets Cynthia Velasquez, played by Lisa or...
It's just a dream, right?
Never mind, I guess. About half of the game's narrative follows this formula. Go to a new part of the nightmare, you meet a quirky character, they meet their gory demise. Certainly doesn't look promising for Henry's next-door neighbor Eileen Galvin, played by Anna Kunneke, who doesn't have much of distinct character traits but has the closest to what could be considered realistic reactions to situations. Oh yeah, the acting in general has been ridiculed throughout the classic run, but I think it's decent enough to not to be too distracting, though it can be stilted. Some have defended it as a stylistic choice to make the world feel more dreamlike, but I don't know. At least in my dreams people have gotten proper stage directions.
The biggest point of contention is the main protagonist himself, who has appeared in some of the most boring characters ever made lists. Apparently from all the player characters in the franchise, Henry Townsend is the one with the least amount of skeletons in his closet, and his only link to the title or town is that he once visited there and took one picture. I venture to guess that perhaps the creators made him bland on purpose so that he could fit better for the audience surrogate role without being an outright silent protagonist. But yeah, I can't be too mad about that because Henry perhaps is the best representation of the serious ethos of an ordinary guy in a horrifying situation. However, what does bring him down though is his utter lack of interest in anything.
What? Another dream. But it seems so real. Or could it be Was I really inside that woman's dream?
This has been explained with his lack of sleep causing him to act that way, but at least for me, if I want to get immersed into horror, I prefer that the character whose life is on my hand would react with "What is this?" instead of "What is this?"
The underlying story, on the other hand, is rather interesting and more complex than what the initial formula may suggest, as droplets of information are periodically delivered to Henry's home door and other various places. By reading this, you'll get to know about the serial killer Walter Sullivan, played by Dennis Walt, to be behind the killings way before the game bothers to tell you about it. Which raises questions because he's been dead for a while. But knowing Silent Hill, your own death is merely a casual requirement for hostile pagan god rituals. If not for that, read the notes because they contain crucial gameplay hints that makes playing the game a slightly less of a hassle. I do like this encouragement for players to do in-game research, it adds to the mysterious aura. There aren't lame jump scares, and instead the horror comes from constantly pressing atmosphere that knows the balance between ambience and music usage, grotesque corroded environments, and unnervingly designed monsters that NOPE!
One thing I knew about Silent Hill games beforehand is that it's wiser to avoid monsters, partly because your resources are scarce, and partly because of the clumsy combat system that is made clumsy on purpose in order to better simulate that the characters are not combat experts. The fault in that design philosophy is that the players are most likely experienced with multiple games beforehand, so it gets frustrating in the wrong way when I know what I should do, but then the game's clumsy mechanics get in my way. And considering this is apparently the most combat-heavy of the original quadrilogy, that's not a good thing.
There are some enemies that can't be hurt without specific tools like this ghost, and boy did it take some trial and error before Stanley could not bother with them. And Walter Sullivan, when he starts to be a frequent chaser during the latter half, is fittingly threatening and has gained an iconic status among the fans for a deserved reason. Even if his line delivery is as stilted as everyone else's, though for him it kind of fits.
Just holding on to her mother's hand.
The rest of them yield to bullets or to beating, and the latter is preferable once you learn the timing of the hits, which then make pretty much every weaker fright fall. Problems come from the predetermined camera angles that, I get it, it's a staple of the early survival horror and it's super artsy and supports the feeling of claustrophobia or whatever. But don't let it in the way of action by obscuring enemies or changing the angle at the crucial moment. Plus it makes turning with keyboard controls unnaturally stiff. Camera is not the only one causing problems, as auto-aim can also act up, which is bad as there's no way to switch targets on the fly. And sometimes the rules of combat are inconsistent, like with this creepified version of Cynthia who I needed to pin down with a special sword, but for some reason she wouldn't stay down long enough.
And don't even get me started on the infamously restrictive inventory that forces you to do a lot of back and forth to your apartment, which, by the way, is the only place where you can save. And no, you can't just drop useless items to make more room. This back and forthing gets even worse towards the latter half, where the game starts to recycle levels. And at that point it just became too exhausting for me to continue. I was planning to finish this game eventually, but this footage was recorded like half a year ago, so I just lost the momentum. Or perhaps I'm just a wuss, but I'm not willing to go for that diagnosis yet.
That's pretty much the things I can say about Silent Hill 4 The Room without going to spoiler territory. Well, I suppose puzzles will to be alright and nothing hugely obtuse, though I start to use walkthrough towards the end just to decrease pointless wandering. That, along with clunky mechanics and non-fleshed out characters that have interesting deliveries, are the most hindering aspects against sinking to the depths of horror. Still, the atmosphere and the way the mystery of the story is structured are creeping, and art direction along with soundscape is fittingly unsettling and has stood the test of time surprisingly well. If this decent enough romp was what the classic era was at its worst, I can't wait to see what masterpieces the first three are.
As I've alluded to, The Room was the end for the so-called classic era, because after this the original Japanese development team was disbanded and the deving responsibilities for the next 4 main entries were cycled around several international teams. So soon I shall talk about an example from that era when I go to the other Silent Hill game available for PC digital stores. In that other review, so I have. Joy.